Like,
dude, yeah.
well,
Sounds like you guys figured it out.
He's going out. Yes.
Hey, grab me.
Okay, hey, I'll be right back. I just gotta switch the camera out of my camera. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries.
And when you say LS, you're talking Corvette mode. You're not talking
It's
Integra LS.
No, it's a 5.3 with like different heads and like an LS1 and intake manifold. And it's probably going to make like 300 something. He's hoping for.
Oh, so not even like a decent one. It's not even like a.
No, it's just like it's just to get it in and running, and he's broke. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't make buku bucks.
Oh
He's
yeah,
got
so
like
without
an AR-5 5-speed, and he's going to come out on like I think he was hoping for like 245s.
oh dude, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I was like, bro.
you can
Like,
have 700 horsepower and like without tires. It ain't.
I told him, I was like, dude, like if you're going for lap records, you have to consider that Tony Zerka's Evo before it went under the knife was making 700 on like 10-inch wide slicks.
Yeah, wide wheels,
Yeah,
all-wheel
like-
drive. Like you got.
and then like Muscleman, I was like, one, Tage's car has been almost the way that it is for I don't know, like 8 years plus.
Oh yeah.
So like you know everything about it. Like the car reacts how you want. This kid is tearing apart a Miata and putting an LS in it and then hoping for gold.
Yeah, on 245s.
Yeah, I was like,
let him do it. Let him see what he gets.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
I mean,
oh, crap.
when he goes out and runs like a 57 or 58, I'm just gonna be like, well, you got 6 more seconds, bro.
Yeah. So what's going on? I don't even know what cars you got. Well, first off, congrats.
Thank you.
What? So obviously you got some Miatas. You got all kinds of cars, but
Yeah.
what's your trajectory here?
The CRX right now, so I wanted to finish my red car, which is just my daily, and I bought it for like $3,500 when those cars right now are going for like 10 to 15. It needed paint. The engine had 210,000 miles on it.
What is your daily? I don't even know what the red car is.
Oh, it's Miata. NC.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. I also have the 4Runner that I've been driving for years, but the NC gets 30 miles per gallon and the 4Runner gets 20. So.
Sure, for sure.
But yeah, the Miata, I wanted to get it done, and Ariel has her and a Miata, and hers is like flying Miata suspension, like coolant reroute, and like just like nice little things to make it work. Although hers doesn't have AC or heater, so it's just as bad.
Oh, yeah.
So, and we wanted to have our Miatas for the wedding. That way, it was his and hers Miata.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And then we had my friend who was the guy marrying us. He read everything out of a Haynes Miata manual.
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
hello everyone. Let's see here. So we're gonna get started here. I'm gonna add you guys all to the channel one by one. Oh, look at that! I can see Tage now. That's nice.
Yeah, we got all that figured
I
out.
love it that way. That's how I like it to be. I'm invisible.
So, well, you're just on your phone, right? You don't have like a laptop next to you. Page.
I'm just on my phone, correct? Yeah, that way I could walk around if I see
So what I do is I have YouTube open up on another page, and it's muted. That way I can
you can see what's up the little lines.
Yeah, I can see Ravi in React. It's like maybe 30 seconds back, but I can at least get the interaction of Ravi.
Yeah. So let's see here. If I go to the Facebook page and I add the link to what the thing was, right?
Just make sure it's muted.
Yeah, I'll just unplug the speakers completely.
All right. Let's see here. Well, that's not good. Every time I get in here, man, I swear the
You just closed your shop.
I know it was So for everybody who's watching, I'm talking to the guys in the background. We're having our fun technicals as always. Let's see here.
Okay, already started?
Oh yeah, it started, but they can't hear you yet.
How many people are on?
Oh, there's Tage. All right, there's Tage. Tage, we can see you now.
Yeah, I'm pulling up you.
All right, I'm getting Brendan pulled up.
We normally get like a few in the beginning right away. It says 6 watching now for you, Wrench.
All right, getting Brandon on.
Where here?
Okay.
Oh, shooting the ship. Is this episode 6?
Yeah,
I believe
episode
so. Yeah, yeah,
6.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There we go. Oh, now I see. I can see Revy on YouTube, but I don't see it on our screen. Got it.
yes, yeah,
Essentially, my
because
camera can only do one output at a time is the problem with
Got
that.
it. Got it.
All right, let's see
well,
if...
now that you got a new one, you can have two cameras on.
I actually was going to turn that on in a second. I did figure out how to do that earlier. All right, Brendan is on now as well. Sweet.
And are we missing Coyote for today?
I think he is at runoffs, I want to say, or some majors or something SECA. So, hello everyone. Now that we've got everybody in here, above me is Tage Evanson, the regional director for the NASA Arizona chapter, and of course Brendan is up in the other corner there as always. And my lunch or dinner is in front of me to my right, as it tends to be with all of these. That is tradition that I have not eaten yet today, and I will eat in the first 10 minutes while Brendan figures out what's going on.
Yes, and at least you don't have to wait for your dinner to show.
No, my lovely girlfriend has been bringing it to me, so that's very awesome. As soon as literally 10 minutes before I was going to come in and do sound tests with you guys, everybody walks in. I'm like, awesome. You had all day.
That's okay.
All day.
Me
10
and
minutes
James were
before
able
we
to
close.
figure it
Also, do you like this new camera? How does that look? I can actually...
You look brilliant.
It doesn't it? Isn't this nice? I'm actually going to do... I think I can actually do the other camera right next to it, and you can see what I mean. And it's like, holy crap. Let me see here if I can do that.
It does make your butt look a little bigger than normal.
That's fairly accurate. Okay. Let's see here.
You know, he definitely looks very crisp.
Yeah, that's what I felt. It was very crisp at a minimum. Let's see here. Whoa, too big. Let's go smaller than that. There we go. So, I'm going to put the side by side of a webcam versus a really nice mirrorless DSLR. So there you go. It's up. If you're on the YouTube, you can see that. The camera on the right is the webcam. The one on the left is a... Yes, I fixed the sound. Thank you for noticing.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's...
Your skin is glowing.
I know. So
Yeah.
this camera, one of our viewers actually is huge into photography and videography. He's like, and I told him I was looking for a new camera because I was wanting to use my T3 to do my web stream, but I found out I had a lot of stuff missing. Mainly, it sucked. But it didn't do autofocus. So this thing actually is watching my eyeball, and it can keep me in focus based on my eyeball. So it just will focus the camera based on eyeball, and then it doesn't like the background's actually much softer than it was otherwise, which I like a lot. So I bought this so we could use it for all the little things we've been doing with the NSX and all that as well. But yeah, the comparison there is absolutely wild. I think it's
Yeah.
light years. Yeah, and I said it was reasonably cheap compared to most of those mirrorless DSLRs. You know, it's completely geared towards video. So nice little addition. So say goodbye to the old webcam me. Bye bye webcam me.
Cheaper than a Quave sequential?
I'm sure.
It was definitely cheaper than every single part of your Quave sequential. So, talking about Quave sequentials, if you guys are watching, NASA, National Auto Sports Association, we do lots of race across the U.S. Every year there's a thing called NASA Nationals, which is where you get to go kind of race against the other best folks in the area or anybody who's able to make the trip. And it's every time I've gone, I've been there 3 times now, and every time I go, I look at in awe between you have these little open car trailers to these giant, massive rigs with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cars in there, and you all are racing on the same piece of concrete. So this year, Tage was going out there. You go pretty often, don't you, Tage?
I go just about every single year. So I try to go more as a competitor, but probably I've been as an official more often than not. So as not as much as a driver as I'd like to, but it is what it is. So yeah, pretty much they've been to almost every single one since 2008, I think, in some sort of capacity.
So this year you took your Civic, and if you guys haven't seen a Civic, it was that shot that was playing right before the video started was an interior shot from him at Chuck Wall chasing down 2, were those Cup cars or were those? Yeah, that was really fun to watch. I watched the whole thing just to actually see it. Maybe we'll throw it up later, but to watch a Civic, an EG Civic. It's got a K-swap, obviously. It's supercharged. It's got modifications done to it. It's not stock by any means, but to watch it literally pulling on Porsches, mainly on the entry. I noticed you really caught them up on the entry to a lot of corners. You would just all of a sudden be re-glued right back to them. So it was quite entertaining to watch.
That actually plays to one thing that I tell a lot of people where I go from, I tell people MRRR cars, rear-wheel drive cars, and then front-wheel drive, all-wheel drive cars. When you have like MRRR cars or mid-engine, rear-engine cars, being able to go really fast and drive them at their peak is kind of like running on a rope. Not many can do it.
I am first to admit I cannot even anywhere get near the capacity of my car. That's been proven time and time again that it's still got a lot more in it than I have. And I was thankful. I was down at Podium Club and Tony Lisa showed up this weekend, which was awesome. Tony Lisa's got tons and tons of experience, so he sat there and me and him for about 2 hours worked on it, and I got a little bit more confident with it, and that was nice. And I think we're going back the right direction. And we were trying to put the boost back up to where it has been, because I've been running it at about 320, 330 horsepower for the last year, just because every time we put it on the high boost tuned, it just cuts out massively. And I think I was speaking with Amir over the last couple of days. Amir was like, "Dude, we run our plugs at like 017." I'm like,
Oh, wow.
yeah, I didn't know. I've never closed a plug that tight. He's like, yeah, if you're running your plugs at anything near factory, which we were at like 026 and factory's 030 on that engine. He's like, yeah, he's like, you'll. I sent him the video from Long Beach of it stuttering down the straightaway, and he's like, yeah, that's probably spark. You're just losing spark. So that's the next step.
That much pressure.
Yeah, I never really thought about it. Man, I haven't really done boosted engines much for years, and this is the first one in a long time. So these are little things I've overlooked. So that's the next step, is to try to close that spark gap down and see if I can get all 420 horses and 408 pounds of torque back in that thing. I was going to try to do it before NASA is the goal, because I would like to go for a little chase there. And, I don't think in the time attack there's a lot of guys right now that are set up to keep up with me, but every now and then, like Thomas Stober, he usually comes out of nowhere. That guy's fast. But yeah, sidetracked, 100% sidetracked. Tage, tell us about NASA Nationals at Laguna Seca this year.
At Laguna Seca this year, yeah. I was telling Brandon before we got started, it wasn't the worst. The worst was absolutely Coda, but
I didn't hear about Coda.
Coda at the race car didn't even start. I didn't even get it to turn over and start up to go idle. I just worked on the tow vehicle and the trailer the entire event. So,
well, is it nice and maintained now? It's in good shape.
Laguna was it was not the worst, because I did actually get to put some laps down.
Right.
So there's a Thursday practice day. So driving there was nice. That there was no problems at all with the travel getting there. Check-in was great. We had a great, huge paddock spot, so plenty of room there. The Thursday started off, so I went out there. Well, I downed the car, and luckily the car put down actually quite a bit less power than it did on Tony's dyno at UMS, so that was pleasantly surprised.
Was that MCE?
No, it was actually these other guys. I can't remember. They're out of like they're back from the Midwest or something, but quite a bit less power. So I had about 150 pounds of ballast bolted in the car, prepared that if it made a little bit too much. So ultimately, I was able to pull out all of the ballast from the car. Missed the first session because I was trying to get my classing all correct and get that uploaded, and then went to the first session. The first two sessions that I did, our group, someone crashed, hit the wall, or we had to stop the session, got ended early. So basically did a warm-up lap, and then on my hot lap, where I was trying to see, hey, where am I sitting at compared to everyone else, was ended. So that was the first two sessions. The third session, it was looking like it was going to be pretty good. I saw a car in front of me, but they pretty much, I could see their eyes in the mirror watching me, and proceeded to block me for basically the whole entire session. So, and every time I was like, hey, why don't I get like some more space or whatnot? I mean, there's just a lot of cars on track. So that wasn't really a wise decision. I was like, oh yeah, he's going to let me by here. No, he just would look in the mirror and proceed to block me. So that was a very frustrating a time. I think
practice.
Exactly. It wasn't even race. Like, I get like race group practice. People are trying to kind of fill you up of, hey, what can they get away with? But this wasn't a general practice time trial race group combined. It was just a very, very large group. 45 cars is the max. So that's what we had each session, which isn't that many, but just when you initially go out, everyone's in a big group in a clump, and the speed differentials were just huge because we had SU cars out there running a good 10 to 15 seconds a lap faster, than even me. So it was constant traffic in front and behind. So it was tough to get a lap time down. I think my quickest from practice, I don't remember what it was, maybe a 137 or something. And that was with dicing with this guy and trying to get around traffic. So
when we went in 2015, did you take the Civic or was that the Radical, or would you just along for the ride? I can't remember.
I thought he went with you.
Were you
Yeah,
just
no,
with me?
you're-
It was just with me. I couldn't remember if you brought a car at that
Yeah,
time or not. So that was
no, I
was that
only-
your first time with the Civic there? Or?
Yeah, that's first time
Okay.
in the Civic there. The only time I drove was your NSX actually. I only did like a 141.
No.
Back then.
In the NSX, you did a low 138, dude. I did a high
Oh, well.
138. I remember we were
Interesting.
about 5 seconds or about half a second difference, and I was chasing you down to a tune of half a second. It was 38s. The guys were leading us that year with like 36s and 35s.
Yeah, no, 35's one. I looked back at the results, and it showed only a 41. I wonder if I got DQ'd on one of the sessions. And again, that was for time trial.
Oh,
At any rate,
yeah.
though, yeah. So no, I mean, this was on, I wouldn't say old crappy tires. These were not great tires. My car is quite a bit faster on Hoosier A's, and this was on R's that were a little bit older. Car was really loose, and like I said, a lot of traffic. So usually, even on our local tracks, going from an R to an A is usually 1 to 2 seconds, and then stickers is worth another 2 to 3 seconds as well if they got like a couple heat cycles, having stickers versus not. So I'm pretty confident it would have been, at least 4 to 5 seconds faster. So it would have been right there. Would I beat Jake, who had like I think he had a low 132. I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure I could have been a 133, but would have been enough to win nationals. I don't know. I think that's what I'm most upset about.
At least with racing, time doesn't actually matter.
Yeah, just got to get in front.
Time trial, yeah. No, time trial. I'm confident. I'm absolutely confident I would not have come close to winning that race. My Civic barely can finish a 30-minute race. So that's a 45. It's fun to race, but I can almost guarantee you with about a 50% track record of quote unquote finishing a race. I'm pretty sure it would have been about a 20% chance I would have finished and I wouldn't have been in front.
You represent the 2022 Ferrari season.
Yeah, my car is not an endurance car, and endurance means anything.
Neither is theirs. Theirs is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very much a time trial car.
How many times was the transmission out? Was it twice?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's the big one. So
we're all waiting for that
session, or because
yeah,
everybody here doesn't know that you had other trials at your trials.
So this was even before. Okay,
I'll pull it
up. I put a sequential transmission in the car a little over a year ago. Awesome day one. I'm like, this is fantastic. I was tired of blowing up stock Honda transmissions. It's like, all right, when you start boosting the car and racing it, it's inevitable you're going to strip the teeth off of either third or fourth or both. So I was like, all right, I'm going to spend the bucks. I should not, with my power level, should not have any problems with this thing. I ran it for an entire year. 1 year at in August was 1 year mark. High Plains Raceway. I went out for practice, first session there, and fourth gear, everything, all the teeth got stripped off the gear. So I don't think it was 100% the transmission's fault. I had just put, or actually I didn't. Tony from US had just put paddle shift kit in the car, so it has sequential, but it had a lever you had to pull each time. This time it was you just hit the paddles on there. I think I may have sneezed or hit a bump or something when I went from third to fourth, and it accidentally hit the lever twice. So I went from third to fifth, and without even thinking, I just hit the downshift because I knew that it was the wrong gear, but I was still floored. So and the kit honored it. So usually when you downshift, you're pushing the clutch in or you're lifting at least off the throttle. So it was a full throttle downshift. It wasn't too high of RPM, but it just snapped all the teeth off. So that was the start of my woes. So I sat at High Plains since I was there with Fatty and Kevin and a couple other NASA folks out there. I'm like, all right, I'm stuck here for the entire weekend. So I just hung out there and basically had talked with Keith at Hossport. He was able to source another gear. He's got multiple of these kits. So he let me basically take some of the new stock, and I just ordered him, the parts from the UK so he could replenish his stock. Was able to rebuild that transmission. I said, hey, at Nationals, I don't want to have any problems. I don't want to have things like this picture you're showing
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, so, that's how I saw about this.
I replaced, so much stuff. Anything and everything that has ever broken on the car. CV joints, I know you've had your share of problems, Brandon, even at this particular track. So I'm like, hey, axles are great. I'm putting brand new ones in. My old ones are going to be my spares. That transmission got completely refreshed, had a brand new fourth gear. The laundry list is huge of how many new parts this car had. And like I said, so after I was blocked in that session, there's another session then after that one. The car started misfiring. Tony's like, hey, make the spark plug that smaller. It ended up being the spark plug's actually broken. I don't know how you break a spark plug, but the porcelain thing.
The porcelain, yeah.
Like shattered?
I wouldn't say shatter, but it was like you could move it back and forth and you could spin it.
My only guess is how old they were, heat and so on and so forth.
It could be. So I mean, that was one session that was toast. I went out there and started backfiring immediately. Another session, I thought the throttle cable was stuck. I floored, I heard a big pop, and then all of a sudden the car was acting as if it was wide open throttle. The intercooler pipe blew off on the the side that's coming in. So basically, it was like wide open throttle. The supercharger is just floored all the time. So that was fun getting back to the paddock. I just basically turned the car on and off to do throttle. Because if I pushed the clutch in and just hit the rev limiter consistently, and then holding on the brakes was just going to burn the brakes up. So the final session though was I went to a shift to fourth gear, and it sounded like again a big pop, and then it was just revving in fourth gear. I'm like, that's not good. I think I blew up fourth gear again. It didn't blow up. There's like these engagement dogs on the gear. They had worn down, so I don't know how that happened after only less than an hour runtime on this car. So I did notice there was burn marks on the gear itself, and all I can think of is I didn't have enough fluid in the transmission, because when I blew it up in Colorado the month before, I drained everything, the fluid, all the lines, the pump. There's a cooler on there, but then I just put in the standard can of 2 quarts. I'm sure I was probably, a half a quart or maybe even a full quart low, because that cooling system does have quite a bit of fluid capacity. What I'm used to seeing though is when fourth gear doesn't get enough oil, fifth gear also has burn marks as well. However, I was in fifth gear very, very little. So all I can think of, no load, maybe didn't get the heat. And I think the heat is what caused those dogs to wear super fast. So unfortunately from there, that's where I'm like, all right, this transmission's got to come out. I said, I know I'm done for the weekend. At this point, I can't get these parts, or I wasn't even thinking like, hey, I'll fly them in. But I'm like, well, if I'm stuck here, because again, I've got like 4 guys. I got Robert Rose, and I got Jim Cosolino, and I got Chris Wynn. They're all kind of camping in my little paddock spot and staying in the RV. I'm like, well, I might as well go home with a car that's working. So let me get started working on this thing. Go to look at the pop the hood. I'm like, oh my god, the motor mount's broken as well. So the motor mount literally ripped out of the chassis.
Oh wow!
Was that the passenger side?
The passenger side.
I thought it looked like it was like, I thought it looked a little off in one of the pictures I was looking at. I was following you. I didn't got to watch much live, but I kept seeing your updates. I'm like, this doesn't look particularly enjoyable.
Yeah. So
how was it welded on?
So it was originally bolted on, but I was like, I can make this lighter if I get rid of the bolts and cut all the little brackets and then just weld it directly. So everywhere it was welded, it just literally, the welds held, it just literally came
took the metal right out of it with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
I actually had a CRX we did at the shop, and they put that in there, and from a F-Series swap, they had cut the bottom part of the frame, and they cut the pinch weld under there, and then the entire frame cut off. Like, just literally yanked the whole thing out. We ended up getting like almost a 1/4 inch thick piece of metal to remake that frame.
Yes.
And just acetylene torch and heat it back into place, and then weld everything up.
Yeah, so that was a big distraction. Luckily, the guys right next to me had, there were a whole bunch of Honda Challenge guys. I knew Scott next to me, and so like, you can borrow our engine hoist. Like,
that's what
this makes it like
I was gonna wonder if you came
easier.
that prepared and had an engine hoist and all that crap with you. I was like, there's no
I was
way.
surprised to see you have it, but I do know for a fact I've actually helped some of those Honda Challenge guys at Fontana change an engine from Saturday to Sunday.
On like a B series and D series, all that other stuff, that stuff was pie. But a lot of times the K's come out nice, and obviously your whole front end comes off. You've designed it to come apart the way it comes apart, which is. But if that was not a car with a sub, like a subframe piece that comes out front, that would be a much different. I mean, it's not the same. It's not even close to the same if it comes out in the traditional OEM fashion. So I mean,
I will say I'm really bad because now I know Tage has one too, and I know you have a few, but lifts. I am so spoiled with that. I don't even think about pulling engines out the top anymore. I just loosen them, put them on something, and then lift the car.
So
off.
we designed the new NSX swap, the one that's in ours. We designed it so you can take a single jack with a specific block of wood under the center of it and take the whole engine out on one jack. 45 minutes out the bottom.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, then you sit once you get it in there, you kind of have to tilt it and then it'll come out. You can get it out on jack stands. Thomas and I had it out almost all the way. We ended up just taking the gearbox off and putting it back, but we had it almost out of the car before we realized we didn't need to take it out of the car.
Yeah, seeing Tage when his car was taken apart and he had the whole front end like unbolted, I was like, I might want to do some of that tomorrow.
It's a good idea, making it modular. Like I don't know if you saw Amir just tube the whole back of his NSX, and I'm wondering if has done something that the engine will come backwards out of the car instead of having to go out the bottom.
Nice.
I would. That's what I would do. I mean, if you're not using the trunk and you don't need any of that crap, he cut all of it out. It's gone. I'd almost see it like it being pinned like longitudinally. You could just slide it off the pins, you know. It would make sense. Just pop the axles out and disconnect the electrical and stuff, and then slide it right back off on some pins.
All right,
You
so
could
back
almost.
on the subject,
Oh
right?
no!
Yeah. I know. What's funny is
Tage,
it looks crazy, but that's really only about an hour's worth of work. So to get to that stage there takes about an hour. People are amazed, like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you pulled the thing and put it back in that same night." With very, very little bit of help. But yeah, the whole engine came out. So I'm like, I got to fix this motor mount. There's no way around. The only way to fix it properly is to pull the thing out. So the nice thing is it is welded like all sorts of places. It's got gussets in there, so it's actually stronger than OEM. So that part's fixed. And it makes taking the transmission off and putting it back on like a super duper breeze since that motor had to come out anyway. So it was kind of a blessing since that motor mount broke anyways. However, what did I do? In my haste to get this, how do we get the transmission fixed? So again, I call up Keith at Hossport. He bought I think he had to buy 5 transmissions from Momentum Motorsports to become a dealer, and so he's got a whole bunch of these things, and some of them have been sold. Excuse me, had been sold already, but he had another spare.
Yeah, take a drink. You're good.
We don't want anybody dying on our show yet.
No.
Oh man.
Not yet. We're not ready.
Yeah. He had the parts, but I was like, well, how can we get these things here? So I know that back in the day when I used to work in hands-on stuff with technologies, we used to do what was called a counter-to-counter. You drop it off at airlines, and the airlines would fly the parts there, so it'd be there the same day. Apparently FedEx does this as well, but you have to have. We tried doing this. Keith was down at the airport. They tried doing that thing, but they're saying you have to have some account where it's been like TSA clear to make sure you're not a terrorist. So that didn't work out. It's like, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna throw in the towel. I'll still get the parts out there. I was hoping to have them that Friday night, so that way it could be fixed for Saturday and at least make some of the races. But we knew that Chris's wife had already had a plane ticket booked to come out there Saturday night. So I'm like, well, that's good enough. I don't have to pay like a crazy shipping fees. So got the parts from, Keith's coworker brought it up to my wife. My wife brought it to Kara. Kara flew in that Saturday night. So that that picture you're seeing is Saturday day. And so I prepped it ready. I knew those parts would be coming, that I needed to fix the transmission. And her plane landed in Monterey at like 7 p.m. that night. It's like, 8 p.m. I'll have the parts and I can have it in later that night. Nice. So sure enough, it was about 8 p.m. She showed up, had all the parts, and I kind of had everything laid out. And I tried to do it as took the parts out in order.
Meticulous,
so I don't have to really look at a diagram, but of course, once you put the thing down, I may have picked a part up and then flipped it over and looked at it. And long story short, there's one collet that's got a little key on it, not key in the bottom. I put that in upside down, and then, I put it together and nothing spins. I'm like, all right, so transmission, motor's back in, everything's back on the car. I go to try to start the car won't shift. So I'm like, all right, this is like midnight now on Saturday. I'm like, all right, I'm going to deal with this tomorrow. So I'm like already ready to throw in the towel, but I'm like, well, the race is until the last event. I'm like, I can fix this tomorrow morning. Let me just get some sleep. So I pulled the transmission. Again, I'm like on fire here. So I get that thing out in like 45 minutes, get it on the bench, rip it all apart. I'm like, oh, here's the problem. All right, now I know exactly what the problem is. Put it back together. However, somewhere in that whole entire spiel, I think probably when I had it in upside down, I started the car. It damaged this little I don't know, it's called like this
D10
little
ball.
D10.
D10, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not sure where's the camera at.
I
You can
got
see
it.
it's like it's
So
not
essentially,
looking.
that sits on one of the forks and keeps it from moving until you want it to move or until you act upon it.
Yeah, kind of. So it's a sequential. So it's got this barrel and it's got little divots in there. So yes, the barrel would not spin, which is what allows it to shift. Of course, I don't realize this, and so that transmission really came out for no reason. I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, all right, I'm just putting it back in, throwing in the towel. There's nothing I can do about this. Get home, pull the transmission yet again. I'm thinking it's the shift forks. I do replace the shift forks because those did actually have some hairline cracks. I wasn't even thinking the D10 because I thought it was the shift forks because in my grand scheme of Tageness of trying to fix things on the cheap, I'm like, well, I'll just weld it. I'll weld these things and I'll hand grind it down so it's the same shape as it was from the factory. I actually think I successfully did that, but did not realizing it had the D10 thing. So, again, to call a keep again when I got back home, put in brand new shift forks, go to shift the transmission, still won't shift. I'm like, what the heck? So this little bird, just as Birdie said, I think
you can see it on this picture. You can see how like the tip of it's just
smashed it is.
It's just not. It's not happy looking, Tage.
Yeah. Because there's a spring behind that.
It should pop that ball right out.
Well,
with the spring.
Not just the ball, but like there's all sorts of it's not that good, but it's like there's these burrs.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the burrs is what it got screwed down into it, and I should have known because I screwed it on there, and you go till you just barely feel it, but like usually you feel it, and you can feel like the spring. When I twisted it, it came to a dead stop, like solid. And I think that in my mind, I'm like, ooh, I bet you somehow that thing is messed up. And as soon as I unscrewed that thing, it shifted just fine. I'm like, oh, here's the problem.
So was it running good at Podium Club last weekend? Did you have it all sorted out? Was it?
Yeah, so I ran it there. I mean, it's having some other heat-related issues. I'm seeing really super high intercooler temps. I think that's always been the case.
Right.
I've never been figuring out why my car doesn't do well towards the end of a race or after a few laps. I think it's just pulling timing like crazy.
Probably.
Way down on power.
It could. What size radiator do you use? Is it a full size or?
Well, so it's not engine coolant temp. It is intake air temp.
Yeah, you were saying like 160 plus, weren't you?
225.
Whoa!
Yes, 225.
Tony told me to shut it down at 160 plus.
Yeah, so that was when I had the old intercooler set up when I was laying flat, and I used a diverter trying to push the air down through the splitter. So I said, oh, well, that was before Nationals. I flipped it so that it's got air coming straight at it. I did testing at Podium Club. It was 205 then, after just a couple laps in 80-degree weather.
Yeah.
Then I drilled holes into the air dam, so it had additional in there, and it got like maybe 195. And so when I was at Podium Club, I was drilling holes, cutting holes, trying to make more stuff. I was still seeing like around 180, 185.
It's pretty high. I mean, like 130 is goal.
It is kind of. So only about 1/3 is sticking up into the like the open air part. The other part's behind that air dam. So that's where I'm starting to cut holes now. I've just cut a ginormous hole, and I'm going to have ducting going in that's diverted directly to it. So I'm pretty sure.
Do you not run
timing? Do
you not run air to water because of weight?
I've never considered it, just from the complexity of yet more stuff and pumps, but
yeah.
I may go to that.
It's been a blessing. I'm glad Tony turned me onto that instead of going other routes.
I may have to go that route if I can.
Because I was running 23 pounds of boost and I barely saw 120, barely.
Yes.
I ran like 8 laps and it was seeing 120. And as it went up to 120, when I went into turn 1, it went right back down.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't heat soak. It just goes up and down. 90, 120, 90, 120, 90, 120.
So do you have an external pump then, and then a radiator somewhere else?
I'm running it's a 3/4 gallon reservoir. It's really small. I'm actually going to go bigger because I could get it much lower than that with a bigger reservoir. But I'm running a small Bosch pump that's about that big that sits in my trunk, and then it runs it through dash 10 lines through a Garrett core, and then I have a fairly inexpensive second radiator that's just in front of the first radiator. That's it. It was. I think I spent maybe including the intercooler, because that's the core for the intercooler was $350, and then getting it turned into an intercooler cost me another like $600 or $700. But outside of that, I think the rest of the parts were like $350 for everything.
Yeah, I know there's significant, I think, performance to be had. It's just so the question was, do I buy a bigger air-to-air intercooler that takes up the entire opening, because right now it's fairly small.
Because
for
you
how
don't
big
have
my
water
opening
temp
is.
issues, right? You don't have that, so that's an option.
Not currently. The more I seem to duct this thing and steal the air towards the intercooler, maybe I'll start seeing that again.
Right.
Yeah, we did have someone mention time for water meth, but I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a fan of how much cylinder pressure that stuff adds.
Yeah, I don't want to comply. Again, this
And
needs to be. I'm trying to make it a race car to where it can go 45 minutes. So
the other thing
the
that
air to meth is good for a time attack car. I
and
think.
the other thing we didn't consider between our comparison is I'm running ethanol and you're not.
Oh, this is true.
So I mean
but
that
still,
alone is just a massive density
Yeah, I mean,
temperature.
Tage is still a little high though.
Yeah, oh,
for
it's
that.
still.
I mean,
I don't think if you ran ethanol, you'd be anywhere near 130. But it would. That's a
Yeah.
significant difference for me. I'm sure a lot of my temperature control comes from running ethanol as opposed to 91.
Yeah, I kind of think Tage is onto something. At least try the ducting and stuff like that. And I would say if the ducting isn't cutting it, and he still can't finish a race without it pulling massive amounts of timing, that might be the time for water to air.
Something.
Yep, agree.
So what was so we had another topic we wanted to talk a little bit about, which was first car mods. So we've all been around.
Oh,
Yeah.
so essentially, the way that I was thinking, it wasn't like the first car mod you ever did.
Or good
it
car
was
mods.
Like, you just bought X car. What is the first thing you buy for it?
Well, I have a picture of one of your early cars, Brendan. I just thought
I don't remember which
we'd
one.
share this with everyone. Anyways,
I tell you what,
he
my
worked really hard. It was his first paint job. His first paint job ever, right there.
Yeah. Oh my god, I wish I could paint that good.
Oh, you did pretty good job on your NC.
There's a huge delay. I don't get to see what you guys are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
No.
yeah.
It's good.
It shows up later. All right.
Oh no, video unavailable. What'd you do?
Oh no. Uh-oh.
What happened?
Uh-oh.
What'd you
What did I
do?
push? Oh no.
No, it wasn't you. Not you,
Oh.
Tage.
Oh, okay.
The video on the live says unavailable.
Uh-oh.
Robbie,
What happened? I'm showing streaming still.
mine disconnected. I don't know.
Did yours disconnect, Tage?
I'm gonna No, Tage is fine. Tage is fine. All right, maybe my stuff is messed up. You guys can tell me if anybody else.
Well,
can
I'm gonna
the
jump
YouTube.
onto mine and see. So now we don't know.
Is it still playing YouTube for you?
Caesar says Facebook's fine, and everybody else says it's good. So yeah, it's just you, Brendan. Sorry, buddy.
All right. Yeah, that's fine. Your picture of my first car broke my internet.
Looks like the U-wrench video side it broke is what happened, but I'm still showing it sending output.
When's
So
the first car? Was it a Waggle van?
first car.
No, he showed one of those like blue EGs with like a crazy wing and like full Wings West body kit and everything.
Oh, Wings West, yes, for the Nopi Nationals.
Yes. What did Ariel say?
Oh, are you in trouble?
It said that it now shows that the video went to private on the U-wrench one.
Oh no.
Weird. Yeah, we haven't changed anything on
Yeah.
our end.
I don't know. We'll have to figure out that. Sorry for all the U-wrench people.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, it still shows public on my end. That's weird on the U-wrench and the WEL side.
Yeah, because no, on my U-wrench TV thing, it doesn't show anything. So
Well, that stinks.
yeah, it doesn't even show that.
I'll try flicking it on and off and see if it comes back.
I might have to talk to Fred's
Fred.
dad and see what's going on with that. Yeah.
I just shut it on and off again. Let's see if it goes back on. But yeah, it's all listed public on my end. Oh, well, we'll try that and have to figure out what happened for next time. So back to car mods. You were thinking
First mod.
first mod. I was talking about first track mod, first street car mod.
So I would say like let's do this as a track car, which I'm pretty sure most cars we either purchase will probably see a track in some way, shape, or form.
Who are you asking? You asking me? Or are you asking?
I think
Yeah, so let's give you.
Yeah, Tage,
and
go ahead.
We'll just say you bought.
Yep.
A Civic, and what's
Easy.
the first thing that you're going to do to it?
Well, so it's between two. So this goes back to when I was in the car show scene, or I just want the car to look nice, or I'm going to go to the track. It's always going to be between, do I lower it or do I do wheels and tires? So I think that probably applies universally for how you want your car to look. Civics look hideous. All Hondas look hideous, I think, in stock height. I think it looks ridiculous if you do wheels and tires but don't lower it. So I would probably lower it first, do the coilovers, but ultimately it's a package. Wheels, tires, and lowering it. So obviously the only thing that touches the ground is the tires. That makes the absolute biggest difference. But if there's so much freaking body roll, um, it's not going to be helpful either. So we're going to be between one of those two things: coilovers and better tires and wheels.
I always feel like that's always like all of our cars. We always were like, oh, we'll never take it to the track. That's my daily. That's my blah blah blah. I mean,
But even your daily, you want to look nice. Like there's no
yeah.
factory
So
wheels
so
that
my
look good.
my
Like,
daily is obviously the first. Well, actually, my current daily is completely unmolested, which is amazing. It's been that way for 5 years now, and I don't know how that's happened. But the daily before that was the white NSX, which that thing made it, I think, 2 weeks before it was on suspension and tires. And then it was
Yep.
at the racetrack, and me and Marcos were battling, and it was a lot of fun. And then I was like, oh crap, I screwed
So
up.
my yellow FRS. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
I do.
I still had the gas in the tank from the dealership when I took it to the track. Yeah, I
Oh
hadn't
my
put
God.
gas in the car yet.
Oh my god, that's rough.
And it was on track.
So Tage, I met you when you still were racing an Integra. Actually, I came to your house once and actually bought a hood off you. I don't know if you remember that.
oh man,
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
I
it
do
was
remember. You and I go way back.
No, it was when Bowles was still around. Actually, Jason
yeah.
Bowles was still around, and I don't think you had quite bought NASA yet. I don't think that had happened just yet. But I remember, and the reason this sticks out in my mind is because I don't know if you remember how I got involved with NASA, which was when you took over NASA, I was the gate guy at PIR on Fridays, and they paid me.
Oh, I do remember that.
They were paying me.
Very
I was
good.
not
Okay.
I was not at all into road racing or anything. I was, I think, 17, maybe 18, probably 17 still, and
Okay.
they had been paying me like, I think it was like $100 a night to stand in front of PIR and check you guys in from essentially 3:30 to about 8. And I'm like,
Yep.
minimum wage was $6.80. So I'm like, $100. This is great. This
It's
is
a good deal.
This
yeah.
is the. I actually was, because I worked at O'Reilly's back then. I was like, I'm not working today. I gotta go. I'm gonna go make a lot more money doing a heck of a lot less work. So I'm gonna go do that. So I started off doing that, and then I remember when you took over, you said, hey, it wasn't in the budget to pay me for that gate position, and you offered me track time instead. And I had just got that hood off you, and I actually, in the background, behind all this happening, I was modifying my car quite heavily, and that silver Integra made like 505 at the wheel on pump gas,
Oh man.
full race turbo kit, big single there were mono shocks on it. It had decent sized wheels and tires on it. It never overheated. Had all the best you could buy back then, because for me back then I was it was things were cheaper back then. Things were dramatically cheaper than they are now in terms of like cost of living versus the amount of money you can spend on a car.
That's right.
But I remember you said if I wanted to keep doing it, you would give me the track time, and I remember jumping out there with John Rook and all that. So, or not John Rook, John Villa. And then you guys had me do instruction, and I got hooked up with Jeremy Ward and all that stuff. But I remember very specifically my car. I had put all this crazy stuff on it and had never even considered taking it to a racetrack. I mean, I was still doing stupid things on the street back then, and it was another world. And it's funny because after that point of time of modifying the car just a little bit, turned into just a lot of it, turned into now it's everything, all of them. It never ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it never ends.
Multiple NSXs.
Well, I only got the second one because I realized that the first one was going to be worth something if I didn't destroy it. That's the only reason. I was like, this one's getting a lot of rock chips. If I stop driving it and get a piece of crap one and do it in that one, because remember, I bought all of mine when they were like well under 30 grand. They were cheap.
Yep.
Paid 9 grand for that silver one. It was cheap.
No, I remember looking at them in 2013 and then thinking, no, I'm going to buy a car with a warranty. And then I have been kicking myself in the ass.
A proper daily would have been. I have a Subaru for a daily, which is a terrible daily, absolutely awful. And it's the single jingle with no turbo.
If it's stock,
It is stock.
If a Subaru is stock, it is trustworthy. As soon as you modify
No,
it,
no.
time bomb.
My 2.5 RS went through 2 5-speed transmissions, completely stock power level, driving it daily.
No.
And now I have a WRX one in there because it literally lost third gear twice. Just driving it normally, not beating the crap out of it. It's never been on the racetrack. It's got like,
All right.
it's just absolutely ridiculous. They're not reliable. Actually, more proof on that. I had a guy come in for an oil change today on his Subaru, and he's getting an engine out reseal now. Yep.
Oh
He's
yeah. The
he's
sealant on
he's
there,
like,
yeah.
hey, it lost about a quart of oil over the last oil change, and I put it on the lift, and there's just oil dripping out from behind the timing belt. I'm like, I think it's time to go through this one.
Yeah.
Reliable.
Yeah. Well, I will say, as in the K Series world, I've told people that as long as you have, it used to be Circuit Hero, but now a lot of people have them. It's the little timing chain guide that goes around the bottom of the crank pulley, or the bottom of the crank pulley around the chain. And I said, if you have one of those on your engine and it blows up, you're the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Like there's something you did to beat that engine into submission to finally let it blow up. Because what was it? It was 2015. I was at Indy with NASA and everything. We were racing, and I had VTEC problems, and I was like throwing codes, and it was like oil pressure issue here and there, and I was like, okay, well, it's still 50 psi. So
I actually remember that.
Scared for my engine, and I was like, all right, and I kept trying to drive, and then, what was it? I can't remember, like an axle broke or something. I don't remember what happened, but something else kept me from finishing, and so I towed the car home, and the next weekend was a import face-off, and I was like, I'm going to take the race car out there and show everybody why they're a show car and not a race car. And so I drove it out there and then drove it home, and I was like, all right, let me see what this oil pressure issue is, because at idle it wasn't bad, it wouldn't get back up to 90 psi.
Sure.
And so I dropped the pan, and there's chunks in the pan. And I was like, what the hell is this?
Weight reduction. That's what that was. Weight reduction.
So I posted a picture of these little chunks, which was like a spring and like a little circle that was like kind of mashed up. And I was like, Houston, we found the problem. And one of my friends,
pressure regulator?
Jaime Lugo, right? Jaime Lugo, he said, that looks like a hybrid racing timing chain tensioner.
Oh.
And I was
in
like,
your pan.
Oh. Yeah, so I took the timing chain cover off, the tensioner cover off, and then just chunks fell out of that. Like the other pieces of metal fell out of that. And I was like, oh, crap. I ordered a new timing chain tensioner, put it in. Granted, I never took the chain off or even checked timing. I was like, it was running. So I put the new tensioner in, turned it on, and I still haven't checked timing on.
Wow.
Well, no, I took it out a little. Like I took it out to put the cams in there.
Yeah, you'll know.
But
you'll know immediately.
Right.
If it's not.
So, from 2015 until the end of 17, I hadn't checked timing after that because that little tensioner or that little guide under there kept it from moving at all.
Do you have a oil pressure gauge, Brandon?
Yes.
See, I got rid of mine. I don't want to watch those things anymore. I got over it.
It's either there or not.
It's either there, or it's either working perfect, or it's about to be towed off the track. That's really how it works.
Yeah. Well,
no, my aim does it for me. I had to turn it off so it doesn't show me. No oil pressure unless I need to know.
But I had another one where I was coming around a corner, and then the car just went into limp mode. And I was like, what the hell? And I look at my gauges, and coolant is just pegged. And I was like, oh, crap. And that was when my belt tensioner broke completely. The pulley came off. It was
the external belt?
The belt came off. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my water pump wasn't doing anything. Yeah. And so I was like, oh. So I just like turned it off, let it cool down, and then I went and found the problem, went and got it, and I never started it again because we all know what can happen when you peg a cooling system. And I put it back on that day. I had a friend in Phoenix that I went to and got the new part, put it on, put the belt on, turned it on, and just went out for the race because it was time. I was a little late. And I was like, well, if it overheats, it overheats. I'm going to see what happens. And yeah, I didn't change the head gasket. It was perfectly fine. I don't know how.
Wow.
Lucky.
Yeah, no, it was definitely fun, and I'm pretty sure I can't remember which time that was. I think I actually won that race, so it was just like things worked.
Those are rare occurrences for me. Although most of my tragedies happen on the way to where I'm going, and it usually involves a trailer getting destroyed or an axle flying off or something. I've been quite fortunate with the actual encore issues. Other than at your wedding, of course, for some reason my car decided it wanted to. It's like, I don't want to drive here to Indy. I hate this place. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
Well, I mean, if you having your coolant issue at my wedding meant that you had the time attack day go flawlessly,
Yep.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I was like, that could have happened on the bank at 130.
Yeah.
So I was pretty good with that. I thought I made a blown a head gasket or something. And we went out with Tage and last weekend. It was fine. His whole sitting at like 205 degrees, full throttle. So I was happy.
Speaking of which, though,
Yeah.
when Tage was talking about his trials at Nationals, almost 2 weeks ago, I remember you were talking about doing a YouTube series where it just shows what real grassroots racing is actually
that's
about.
Part of why I've been buying this camera
Tage
gear.
Shaking his head.
Yeah, I'm just gonna follow I'm gonna follow Tage around for like 10 minutes, and we'll have pretty much covered the entirety of grassroots racing in 10 minutes. No, I actually bought this camera with the intention of doing a little bit more stuff with NASA and showing a little bit more of the fun side, and also some of the you have to actually have a somewhat strong mental attitude towards racing, because it's not always easy, and quite often it's the exact opposite. It's trying you every moment. If it's not the car, it's the truck. If it's not the truck, it's the trailer. If it's not the trailer, it's your generator broke. If it's not that, your dog is loose and you have no idea where it is.
If it's not that, you had a horrible time on track, you got really angry and then did something against the rules.
That guy cut you off, or that guy gave you the finger, or you or something. You spun and the car's unstable, it's not driving. There's so many pieces to a not even racing day, just a track day, that have to all fall into place to actually make the day relatively enjoyable. And we all do this for stress relief for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's weird. Well, me and Tage were talking about this before we even started the live. Those are the memories that you hate being a part of,
right?
But you love talking about later.
Well, they're great stories. The memories. Oh, the best stories are all about when everything doesn't go right. When everything goes right, it's fairly boring.
They ask, like, why do you put up with all this stuff, and it's so expensive, and it's like, oh, it is so frustrating, and you want to pull your hair out. But I do got to say, for anyone that's on the fence of like, oh, why put yourself through that? When you have a good track day, it is so good.
Yeah.
You will spend whatever to have it happen again. So
not only is like one, a good track day, you either going up in group, or you actually getting to a race or a time trial, and you actually podiuming. Like the first race I won, like literally when I was racing consistently from 15 to 17, I would have my weekend of racing, and no matter what happened, no matter how bad it was, the interaction with people, the adrenaline and stuff that I had for the weekend, just the whole thing in a sandwich, right? I would be good and not care to actually socialize for like 2 weeks after the event, because I had everything I needed just to think about what happened those 2 days.
That's right.
I think a lot of people don't realize that all the stress that comes away with the sport is actually part of the enjoyment. It's part of the release of having to do all these things and work through all these problems and really use your brain a lot. And actually, when you're done with it, you kind of just go, and you feel really good about it. Everything just feels really nice. Even if it was a hectic weekend, it's still a heck beats any day in work, every time.
Man, I don't know. I do got to say, hey, maybe it's a stress relief for you guys. I do got to say, the Monday after a track weekend, I call that my track hangover.
Yeah. No,
everyone knows. Don't talk to me about the week. Just stay away from me for at least a day. I've got a massive track hangover. So
I try my best not to schedule a lot on my workload on Mondays too. I actually only have one tech on Monday specifically because that just solves a lot of my problems. It's one less person I have to actually interact with. And Joe, it's definitely you if you're watching.
I don't know. Do you want to talk about safety gear?
Oh,
yeah. I want to say one thing before we get to safety gear, but for anybody that's on the fence,
try it.
Honestly, any of the stress or any of that stuff, the people you meet at the track and the friends you make along the way make everything worth it, because I've never been like at a NASA event. I've never been somewhere where I felt like there was so many people cheering or trying to get me back out on track when something goes wrong.
They will help you. They will assist you. Honestly, and then the other side is like I've just made more friends than I've had for decades at NASA than I've had anywhere else. I've had people come and go in other social circles, but I know still there's dozens and dozens and dozens of people I've met through NASA that we are still friends. We can, if they called me in and needed something and vice versa, it'd be easy. It'd be an easy relationship.
For sure.
Safety gear.
So safety equipment.
Another good
Essentially,
reason
I
we
know
have
we
Tage
talked
on
about
here, so safety
yes,
equipment.
you
Um,
and Tage.
yeah, oh, that's true. So the aspect we really wanted to go. So we all know safety equipment works. That's great. But what we were trying to get at is why it works and why it's so important that you have to have all or nothing. It doesn't really work that well with certain parts missing, for instance.
Yeah. So
There
Tage, so
there are
what we were
issues with
talking
that.
about was when someone new comes to track and they think that they need, a fixed back seat and a harness and all this stuff. Essentially, what we were talking about for this, uh, you know, safety gear thing was why you go to stuff and what stuff has to be with other stuff to actually be safe and why it makes it unsafe if it's not together.
Sure.
And what would you and to go one step further, I would like to talk about what you, Tage, feel is the single most I don't know, the best safety gear piece that you could have that's not necessarily required. Let's think of HPDE. Like, obviously, you have to have a helmet, but gloves, fire suit, Hans, what do you think is the best thing if somebody was out there and, like, I want to make sure I'm mitigating risk as much as possible and I can spend, on one item? I know. Yeah. Tough one.
Well, what's funny is I was gonna have I got an answer, but it doesn't equal one.
I never
It
does.
would be a
That's
it would
part
be
of
a
that's
seat.
part of this.
Well, yeah. So here's the thing.
That's exactly my example.
Everyone wants to do a harness. Hey, I'm sliding around in my stock seatbelt. I want to do a harness. Well, you can't do a harness with probably 95% of the stock seats out there. I do think, or more, yeah, exactly. I do think that, if you're willing to cut a hole and do some crazy stuff with your stock seats. But I do think, in terms of what is the best single mod you can do to a car, besides the wheels, tires, and coilovers, that kind of stuff, I'd say the seat. The seat, somehow, it allows you to feel what the car is doing, and you're actually able to extract more performance out of the exact same car you've already got. So it doesn't increase performance, it just you're able to communicate better with the car. But
So would
as you
you
guys
go
know,
would you go with a fixed back seat or would you
so
go
what I'm
with
saying,
a reclining seat that has better bolsters?
well, so when you say a single item, so I think we all know where this is going.
Yep.
If you do a fixed back seat, it has a metric shitstorm of things that you have to get along with it to be proper and to be safe. So if you're saying my budget's $1,000 or less, and I'm only going to buy this one thing, I do think a reclining seat that has provisions to do maybe like a harness would probably be a good way to go, because that reclining seat's going to have better bolstering, keep you in the seat, and then the fast follow would be a harness. But again, harnesses usually can't be installed without just a metric crap load of other stuff that you need to do it properly.
So
So
my favorite piece, and based on that, is actually, so like I said, yeah, if you just buy a seat and you only can buy one item and you only have $1,000, $1,500 to actually get a seat installed properly with harnesses and some sort of half cage or a minimum of a harness bar, it's going to be a lot more than $1,500. So my mentality lately has been a hybrid S. Honestly, a hybrid S Hans has been my mentality for a single item, because you can use it again later if you decide to go harnesses and stuff down the road. But in the meantime, you have some added protection for the one of the most damaging things we see in track days is spinal damage.
Does the hybrid S work with a 3-point?
It does work with. It's the only one that's certified for use with a 3-point. Now there's the hybrid S and the hybrid Sport, which there's a terrible naming system because people confuse them all the time. The Sport and the S are not the same thing. The Sport doesn't have that big carbon fiber plate down your back. So the hybrid S has a plate that goes almost halfway down your back, so it basically locks everything together as one unit. And it's designed for use with 3-points, just a regular 3-point belt or a 5 or 6-point harness, where the Sport model still has to be used with the harness. And I see people confuse that all the time.
Now here's one thing I'm thinking, just to give the listeners and viewers something to think about too, is I would agree that one is the way to go in a true track car where, hey, you've got a different aftermarket steering where there's no airbag, etc. I do believe if you've got factory 3-point harness and all of your airbags, there could be, I'm not saying there's no value of having a head and neck restraint, but it is less of a, what do you want to call it, less of an emphasis.
Right.
And I haven't seen too many studies on this one too, but I know people will also ask, hey, should I get a full face or an open face? I do feel if you're driving your street car and it still has the airbags, I'm actually a proponent for an open face, simply to keep that airbag from hitting the helmet that much sooner, and then knocking your head back.
True. Distance. The
So-
distance changes. Yeah. No, that's a valid point.
And
And I
plus,
mean-
it's less expensive.
We're getting more and more into the era too. Like, 'cause, again, we started doing NASA when everybody's driving kind of beat up 90s and 80s cars, you know, and they didn't have a lot of this safety stuff ever. So taking it out really wasn't an issue because it never was there to begin with. And you
Yeah.
you look at a modern Camaro 1LE and it's got like 35,000
Everything.
airbags in it, and it's not really an issue. Like, you're probably quite safe in the factory equipment. It's designed to do quite a bit more than what we
But
could
even
possibly
my-
equip it for.
Even my 92, 95 Civic EG or 94 Integra, that all had airbags.
If it had
too,
if it had working airbags and you didn't remove them, yeah, no, that's definitely a valid
yeah,
thing.
it's
Valid
just a
thing.
consideration. So I do think most of the people
And-
out there, consideration. I always say full face or nothing.
And that always
unless you're driving a street car.
that always brings
Yeah,
up
that
that
makes
one incident. I don't remember. It was at East, and I think it was it a 944 or was it a Camaro? I cannot remember which. I think it was a 944 that still had an airbag, and he went over the rumble strip and it blew up while he was just driving straight. Do you remember that?
I think it was a Camaro.
Was it a
do
Camaro? I cannot remember. It's one or the other. It was either a
I
fifth
have seen
generation
it, though.
Camaro or a 944. I just cannot. I don't know why I'm confusing those two cars, but it was one of the two.
Well, I'm wondering if there's two incidents. I definitely know.
It could happen
that
twice.
I've seen that before on the internet quite a bit on YouTube, where these modern cars just hitting these super high G loads.
Yeah, just
and
get
hitting
the right
curbs,
frequencies.
and the airbags come out. Like,
Right.
what the heck?
Oh, hi,
you know?
Jim. Jim Coslino has joined us, and
Jim.
it looks
Hey,
like
Jim.
Michael thinks it was a Camaro. I think it might have happened twice. I think the 944 is actually in a race group, and then the Camaro was in a DE group, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it did happen twice. That's why I'm having a hard time remembering. But I think they were both at
can't
East
believe-
as well.
I can't believe 944s had airbags back then.
I mean, it is a Porsche.
I can't believe
they
it
wanna
went
put
fast enough to go
new
off.
stuff on there. Yeah, that's fair.
Deploy the
Yeah, they're
curtain.
definitely
yeah.
very slow.
Yeah, see, he remembers the
Speaking
Camaro.
of which, I have one of my favorite videos, which is me, Marcel, and Leland running through the 944 spec class at Chuckwalla.
Oh, we'll have to pull that up next time.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
it's
But,
a 655
as for
and
the safety equipment
Yeah.
and the seat, so I know we talked about what it would be for like a beginner. I just want them to know if you have a fixed back seat, and we're going to go with you only put a fixed back seat in a car. According to NASA and how they know vehicles and how they know crashes and how they know safety, if you put a fixed back seat in a car, I want to list everything that is actually needed to make that fixed back seat safe again.
So it depends. We generally like to say, in general, you need to have a proper harness. The harness needs to be installed properly, and
So
that
5-point or higher.
5-point or higher. There is some provisions for a 4-point. It's very, very small. It's got to have like this FIA spec/B. It's got to be designed specifically for
Chassis
that car.
specific.
It's very, very, very small corner case.
It's like
so
Porsches,
in
isn't
layman's
it?
terms. I mean, there's some BMW ones I think
Yeah.
out there too as well. Some of the modern stuff,
Yeah.
but ideally, yeah, if you're doing a fixed back, well, that 4-point doesn't really apply anymore. So it's going to be a 5-point plus. The 5th point or 6th point, doesn't matter if it's 5 or 6 or 7. Basically, what you're looking for is an anti-sub strap, making sure that when your shoulders go forward, it's pulling up the lap belt, so that sub strap is to prevent that lap belt from pulling up, and then obviously you from sliding under. I know people always say, I'm in here nice and tight. How am I possibly going to ever? Well, ask all the people that died.
Ask physics.
Or have submarines. So it does happen, and the
So,
crash dummies will
harness.
show it as well. Harness, the problem with installing the harness properly is the shoulder straps. A lot of times it's the down lap straps as well. A lot of times just clipping those into the factory locations does not get quite the right angle. So you got to look at the manufacturing specification for saying, hey, how does this need to be mounted? But it's the shoulder ones. The shoulders need to go directly behind you, not all the way back to the trunk or some super duper far away, and no more than 20 degrees. So what you'll see, a lot of people, they'll bolt it to the bottom right behind the seat,
Yeah,
or
the
they'll try to
floor.
or they'll go to let's clip it into the rear seat belts, and it ends up being about 45 degrees. So NASA says no more than 20 degrees, and I believe just about every single manufacturer will have recommendations. They'll say, hey, here's the angles that you can't exceed. So now you need a harness bar or a roll bar or a roll cage. The problem I have with a roll bar or a harness bar is, well, okay, now you're in a fixed back seat. You're completely upright and held that way under all conditions. What happens when the roof caves in a little bit? A roll bar is good, but again, you can have that front part of the roof crushed down your head. And hey, it's great that the rear of your head didn't get hit, but the front is. So ideally, the very, very best is to have a cage. The problem with that is now a cage is dangerous on the street because you're going to hit your head right on the up here without, especially without a
A lot of
helmet.
people don't think about that.
It keeps going, getting more and more complex.
At 60, yeah, if you crash at 60 with a cage, it's no longer the plastic parts in your car you're headbutting.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a solid metal
yourself.
Beam.
You're gonna kill yourself.
Another one.
When I go to work.
Another one. I get this one a lot, and this one isn't. I don't think this is technically covered by the rules. Tage, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure. I've actually not looked at it that carefully. I see folks who are the wrong height for their seat, for instance. So then the belt actually uses the seat as a guide instead of actually passing clearly through the hole.
Yeah, the shoulders, so the belt sits here.
So like if you're like say, oh good, so if you're too short and you pull the belts down and the seat belt's actually tightening on the seat, it's not actually tightening on you.
Yes, I've seen it too, where they're too short. Not even just that, but the shoulder harnesses don't even touch their shoulders.
Yeah, they're just coming down on their chest.
Yeah, it touches down here. Yeah.
Ideally, the holes in your seat should have no bearing on that harness whatsoever.
Right. Yeah,
So
we always try to guide people with that one. Like I said, I wasn't actually sure if that was in the rules, but that's definitely something to keep in mind.
There is, I would say, there's some latitude. I mean, the rules are pretty clear of saying that once you change the safety gear, you need to follow Section 15,
right?
Which is the race car rules, with the exception of if the harness is expired or not, as long as they look good.
It's expired, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and the rules, they do say that the holes are not supposed to be a guide, right? So, because people could say, oh, well, it's bolted to the harnesses are bolted to the floor, but then they come up and then the seat guides it to be the angles they need to be, but that is not allowed.
Not that strong.
Right.
And as for people, so the angle that Tage is talking about, I actually had a friend who his street car had a fixed back and had his harnesses bolted to the rear of the car on the floor, pretty much, and he was driving the speed limit. What was it? He worked for a bank at the time. He just had a car that he had fun with, and a dude who was overdosing on pills turned in front of him with his truck, and he hit him and then compressed his spine. And he was only going 40 miles an hour. And it was a little Civic, and it hit a truck, so it wasn't a dead stop or it wasn't like fast or it wasn't like hitting a wall at 50.
I'm gonna bring up a cringe post here.
Yeah, and he compressed his spine, and it was just like if he had at least proper stuff in there, he wouldn't have needed back surgery.
Ooh, here's a good one too. So I just saw this one. So we see this pretty commonly. So manufacturers are making things easy to put a harness in. So one example is you've got
there you go.
So that technically is the harness bar is guiding the belts. I don't like that at all. I mean, I don't like that. So what I was gonna say was
head just hurts looking at it.
A lot of manufacturers have these.
Oh, we lost
no,
Tage. Tage's phone died. Oh no, Tage!
No!
There he's back.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
We panicked.
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, I can't hear him now. He's got no volume.
Reset your audio. We had this problem before the live.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, while he's doing that, I'm going to bring up the other.
Am I back?
There he's back.
Yes,
there he is.
Are.
Okay, there I'm back. Yeah, you'll have these seat sliders where, hey, the harnesses can go here, the substrap can go here, and the two lap belts. We've accepted that only because, like, hey, this is how it was designed. I wouldn't say the liability's on them, but it's like, this is how it's designed. I've always been a proponent of, hey, the belt should go to the chassis. That way, if the seat were to become broken,
which happens,
you're not flying around. And actually, I saw at Laguna Seca, there was a Mustang. There was a practice day actually on Wednesday, and we saw this Mustang and totally had rolled right in the corkscrew, and you could see in his in-car video, he starts rolling, and you see his seat, like him, he's flying all over the thing, and luckily his harness is what held him in place because the seat completely broke.
Oh, wow.
So I see this graphic a whole bunch, actually.
It's a Mustang.
Oh, yes. So on the picture that Robbie showed of the cringy, harness bar,
yep.
At least in my opinion, you should never put a 5-point or really any harness on a reclining seat.
Right.
I know in some aspects they allow it, but as soon as the seat back breaks, you're no longer tight.
You're
And it's
loose.
not like an OEM one where it will tighten the belt when you crash. That's what the SRS stuff does. And the harness relies on the seat staying in one position.
It is. It is a big
So if
factor.
you have a recliner, if
It's
you
a
have a
huge
recliner,
factor.
it just
Yeah,
you're now free.
yeah, and there's one way to address that too, Brandon. The rules again say once you change the safety equipment, you got to follow all aspects. So one of the aspects is there's no factory seat that's FIA approved.
Right.
If it's not FIA approved, it has to have a back brace. So now it becomes a challenge of how do you properly
A cloth
brace
seat.
a cloth seat. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're right, and I do think in a heavy collision, those belts can stretch a good 6 to 12 inches, and they have that slack now out there, so it's not like it stays 100% always.
Mhm.
But yeah, that does address for those that thinking I'm just going to put a factory harness or a 5-point harness in my factory seat. Again, the rules say hey, it needs a seat back brace because it's not FIA approved.
Mm-hmm.
How do people think of that?
Yeah, after a harness, now your body doesn't move, but your head sure does.
So that's
Yeah.
where our
Now you
Hans
need a
device
Hans.
comes in. So
Now you need a Hans.
So we went from a
and-
seat to a harness bar to at least a 4-point to then a full cage because we talked about the rollover potential issues to then
Yes.
a head and neck system on top of that. So like I said, whenever people come to the store, especially and they ask about seats, I'm like, well, what are you doing with them? Because I've never seen you before. Hello, I'm the guy who's gonna talk myself out of a $4,000 sale in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, I've done that actually with a lot of stuff where someone comes to my shop and they're like, I want to put this in my
Right.
car, and I'm like, hold on, let me actually tell you what needs to happen. Where I think me, Robbie, and Tage all stand on this point, even though I know the NASA rules say it's okay, but
Ooh, traveling.
a harness bar.
My dog is crazy.
No worries. But a harness bar, in my opinion, there's almost never a safe one.
It only-
At least there's not a safe one that you can purchase
So
readily available. for your car.
there's one that I've seen that is relatively safe, but there's still a problem with it. So the Bray Krause offers an awesome one for the Corvette and also for the BMW products. However, here's my point though, that even though I strongly believe they would survive a frontal impact or a rearward impact, they will absolutely fold in half if they're hit in the side. And I don't know, man. I see most people crash sideways. That's more common than
Yeah.
straight into a wall. So,
Yeah.
even with the best designed harness bar, you're still leaving a whole slew of potential incidents that system won't work at all. It only works in a forward backward accident. So, what's the point?
Yeah, perfect.
It just comes to what's the point? If it only works for 30% of the potential accidents, in terms of again, when's the last front end accident I've seen locally was quite a while ago. And I might be forgetting a few, but most of them are sideways, or most of them are going in because we're pitched it in sideways, we missed a turn or whatever. I think
off center.
Aaron Gallagher's was the last one I remember in my head. I'm sure there was more, but remember when the brake failure went straight into the tire wall at Maine. That was the last full straight on one that I can remember. Everything else was pitched sideways. And if you think about it, like I said, you can think of a whole bunch of incidents out there, but I can't think of a lot of head-in or back-in ones. The last one besides that, I think, was Phil Buffington in that same spot, actually. Remember that?
Oh.
Remember that one? Yeah, that one.
He went back in super hard. I mean,
Yeah.
Jacobson went straight in. I've gone straight in a couple different times. But, I mean, I think it's just a consideration for
It
folks
is.
that there's no – I get it. People got street cars. They want to have a harness, but they don't want to do a full cage.
Right.
I never recommend a cage on a street car. A roll bar is definitely better than a harness bar.
And that's why
yeah.
I always go all the way back to the best device you can buy is a Hybrid S.
Yeah, because then you just have a 3-point and you're fine.
You're done. Hybrid S, airbag, probably can't go wrong with that. In my opinion.
Open face.
It just seems like there's less variables involved when you go that route versus as soon as you put that fixed back seat in there in your street car. I always remind people, I say, hey, do you drive this car to the track? Do you drive it every day? And some people are like, oh, I drive it pretty often. I'm like, don't do this.
Yeah, I've done that. I actually had a customer that he came to me and he wanted to put harnesses in a harness bar in his car with his reclining aftermarket seats.
Yikes.
And I looked at it and I literally said, I won't put those in for you.
Oh, and I
Like,
turned down tons of labor because of that same thing. When you do this to my street card, I'm like, no, I like money,
yeah.
not that
And then
much.
they went to another shop and had them put in, and I'm like, cool.
I had a guy ask me
as long as
where
it's
would
not
I
on-
recommend going. I'm like, I wouldn't recommend going anywhere that would do that
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
I wouldn't
You
recommend
figure
them.
that out on your own.
Yeah, that's any place that I would recommend is going to tell you no, and that's why I recommend them.
Yeah.
So we've wrapped up our hour there. I just want to touch one base. So next week, I think we've convinced James Houghton to join us again. He joined us a long time ago before we started doing this particular format, and I've been enjoying this format. I'm going to work on a bit of the more of the background stuff and
like
trying to get more of our guest content on here would be important to me. I was glad I was able to use Tage's video for the intro screen because that was pretty cool.
I do want to maybe not next week because we do have him set up already. But as for the week after that, for some people, I would like to get Robert Rose on here.
Yes,
because
That'd
Robert
be a great
Rose not only knows a lot, and not only has been doing this a lot for track, but if anybody can tell you how to go racing with no money
yes,
and 9 children,
God.
that is the man.
Also,
if he can go racing with multiple cars and be in different classes, like I don't know what his formula is, but it works.
it's baby formula.
Yeah, apparently so.
I also want to try to get and Tage is gonna like this. I'd love to have Tage come back, and I'd also like to see if we can somehow get Russ Whelan on here.
Oh yeah.
And Jeff Abrams at the same time.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
You probably won't get a word in, but okay.
No, that's fine. I can continue eating my dinner, and I can just kind of like put my headphone down and
Yeah.
just let them go, and it'd be great. We actually had
That's
Jeff
right.
on a couple weeks ago, and it was a pleasure to have him on here. He was actually, as you know, Jeff's quite the insightful guy sometimes, and very opinionated, which is actually kind of fun on this type of format.
Yeah, no, it's great, and he's very articulate.
He's very articulate. So hopefully next week we'll have James Houghton on here to join us. And Tage, I thank you for taking some time away from your family and your night to join us and have a good time with us. And I'm sure we'll have you back on here as we keep advancing this a little further down the road.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody. Have a good rest of your night.
Bye-bye.